Hello, good morning, and welcome to Theatre in the Apocalypse. Our guest this week is Feroze Kamardeen. And to those of us in English theatre, working primarily in English theatre, he needs absolutely no introduction. But for those of us who aren't as familiar, Feroze Kamardeen is a theatre director. He has been an actor, a very good actor. But he gave that up during the course of his career. Since 2007, Feroze has written, I have lost count, Feroze, but it's a lot of stuff: comedies, musicals, stand-up sketches, the works. And to name some of them, thank you for voting. Also, let me have a look here. The World Peace Summit, and I love it. And I really liked Feroze, also the kind of play on spelling, which I want to chat to you a little bit about as we go on. So there's the World Peace Summit, the Kotudagama International Airport and Cabinet Reshuffle, 50 Shades of Jara, Freddy Strikes Back, and your latest musical, which is called The Circle of Strife, which I'm very interested in. I also want to mention his 2019 production, Arsikland, the musical, which focused entirely on our constitutional crisis of 2018. So that's Feroze Kamardeen, very briefly, and that's spanning a career of over 20 years now. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us as we talk about what is going to happen with the future of theatre and just kind of explore what the future might hold for us. So let's just start with, what did you do during lockdown? I mean, 2.5 months. What did you do at home? And
yeah. So as you know, I have a 5-year-old daughter who. So just before the lockdown, we were practicing for a play, and we were doing obviously The Circle of Strife. So what happens with these Arsikland musicals is that there's always a very, very short time space. So from the time I finish writing the play, for us to go on stage, I have to, the shorter the time space of rehearsal, the better, because of relevance of the play, because of the content of the play. It doesn't it can't hold for too long. I can't keep it on the shelf for too long. So I finished writing.
Timely.
Yeah, I finished writing the play sometime in end of December. January, we started rehearsals and we went on stage on the 30th of March. So from January to March, I was never at home, so it was kind of rehearsals every day, either with the band or with the separate members of the cast, full cast. So the lockdown meant that I was at home. I wasn't leaving in the morning, early morning, and coming back late night and just popping in briefly to change during the evening. So obviously, my daughter absolutely enjoyed the time that I spent at home, and so much so that she thought that was kind of going to be it for the rest of this thing. So recently, when I started going, and I know, Tracy, I don't know whether your kids are like this, but my one is kind of got that little teledrama actress born in her, right? And so she, the first day that I came to work, she kind of, did this entire teledrama scene saying, "No, don't go, please don't leave me," like real, gave me a lot of grief. But lockdown was, kind of good because, we kind of didn't have to, nothing was rushed anymore. You had plenty of time to do stuff, plenty of time to sit down and read, and obviously, in my case, catch up on some TV as well, which I had sorely missed during that time. So lockdown was, it went off fairly okay. Of course, after a while, it does get tedious for everybody, mostly for my wife having me around all the time. Probably not the greatest thing, but then anyway. But now we're back at work, so yeah.
But it's interesting what you were saying about people slowing down, because in general, that's been a feeling, hasn't it? And a couple of our previous guests have commented on it, the fact that we would never have slowed down and taken this time otherwise, because we're all sort of so firmly sort of in that kind of race and the kind of the
Right.
circle of strife,
Yes.
that we would never
Also,
voluntarily actually take that step back.
I think this epidemic, this pandemic, and the lockdown kind of, in a way, to a lot of people, I think it kind of brought us back down to earth, in the sense that if you don't, I mean, I think a lot of us, myself included, have this thing: if I don't get up, get ready, and go to work, something catastrophic is going to happen. It's
Or you
almost
feel
like,
guilty.
yeah, you feel guilty and this thing, and then you realize, yeah, no, nothing catastrophic is going to happen like that. Buildings are not going to collapse. These things are not. I mean, it's fine. So in a sense, I think everybody. I think there was a little bit of tranquility as well in the midst of all that. There was a little bit of tranquility, and I think lots of us probably have at some point said, we must endeavor to spend more quality time with family, spend more quality time. But it kind of became more a catchphrase rather than anything else. But
Yeah.
here we were almost enforced into doing that, spending time, and automatically it became quality time which we
Yes.
spend with families, right? So I guess
Yeah.
there were that is probably a positive from this whole thing.
Oh, yeah. So let's talk about your play now, because you opened Arsikland, the Circle of Strife, and you only ran for 2 days, and
That's
then
right.
you had to cancel it, right? So I
Yeah.
just want you to talk about getting ready for this show, and then also kind of keeping an eye on the news and what was happening.
Yeah.
And we were all a little bit in denial, weren't we? We never sort of imagined that this pandemic would be this gargantuan thing that would just bring life to a standstill. So, I mean, you would have been watching all that developing while doing your texts and your dress and starting the show. So just, how difficult was it to make that decision to stop the play? What was the cast feeling?
So as you know, as I mentioned before, the Arsikland is very. So last year we did from start to finish, from first rehearsal to opening night, we took about 90 odd days. This time it was 75 days, right? So it was much shorter. So the cast also was, I mean, from January, it was just a buzz of activity. And the problem with my plays, as most of my cast members will tell you, is that the script kind of changes on the fly, right? So Nishant, my vocal director, he's now quite used to it. He's quite used to me calling him and saying, Nishant, I would like to add this. I want to take this off. There's a brand new song. In fact, there was a brand new song that came like 3 weeks before opening night, which they had to rehearse because it's a new scene. So they're all caught up in this. And then we didn't, as you said, we obviously heard of what was happening in Wuhan, what was happening in other countries. And, I think by that time, Italy also had started, recording massive numbers. But we were living in this bubble thinking, okay, it's not going to happen to us. Okay, we're an island. It's probably not going to happen to us. Yeah. So my first inkling that something was wrong was on opening night, when one of my long-standing fans, he's seen almost every Puswedilla, he's seen every Freddy, he comes to see, every play, even Hamlet, all the plays that I do, he comes to see it. And he always buys 20 tickets, and he always brings his family, and they have kind of almost like a tradition where they come to see my play, and then he hosts his entire family for dinner, and they have it's like a social gathering for them. He messaged me and said, I'm really sorry, but I won't be able to come because of this. Because I am, obviously, he's over 65 and he does have other things. He said, so I'm in the high risk category, so I've decided not to come. And because I'm not coming, everybody else feels really bad that I'm missing your show, and they don't want to come because they know how upset I am at missing your show. So please forgive me, I won't be able to come. And he said, I'm just informing you because there'll be 20 seats empty in the front row, right? So please, if you can move some people down, so I know, because the actors don't like to see empty seats. So I figured, okay, something's up. On Saturday, we got some messages from people who were concerned about this and whatever. So we actually decided to run the show with a caveat, where we told people, if you're showing any signs of, if you're exhibiting any symptoms, fever, whatever, please don't come for the show. We will refund your money. Don't worry, right? And we also gave them the assurance that if they are scared to come as a result of that we will refund the unutilized tickets for Saturday's show. We did check temperatures and we had hand sanitizing facilities, but we did the Saturday show. But by the time Sunday came along, and this was also, remember, the Royto weekend, right? So the last day of the Royal Thomian was on Saturday. So that was the 14th, right? So on Sunday, we realized that this was kind of blowing up pretty badly. And so I quickly summoned everyone to the alignment. I didn't call the cast at the time, but I summoned, a few members of the cast, people like Sula and Sanjeeva, and obviously Nishanta, vocal director, Ashan and Siraj, the producers, myself, Ida, we were all there. And we took the decision. We said, that's it. We have to cancel the show. We have no choice. That show actually was my corporate sponsor's show, right? So it was the day that all their privileged customers were coming. So I had to take the call and tell them. Yeah. So I told them, I said, look, there's nothing. We have to cancel the show, and we'll take the decision now. So they were very understanding. They said, we fully understand. This is not a usual situation, and they said, that's fine. You do whatever you think is best. So then we quickly decided to cancel it. We put this thing on social media saying, look, we're canceling the show and we'll refund the money and whatever. And then the cast came in. So we informed them. They are obviously gutted, Tracy. You've this thing, right? So over, the thing with English theatre is that they have a natural cycle for everything, right? So even at the end of a production, they have post-production blues. This is what we call post-production depression. So they prepare for post-production depression to happen on the last night of the show, right? Not in the middle of the show, right? So they came in on Sunday and we had to inform them. Obviously, they realized, oh gosh, that's it, right? So then I told them, no, you are actually performing tonight to an empty audience, right? So on Sunday, we obviously canceled the show. There were no audience members, but we actually performed to an empty audience. And we recorded that show. And it turned out to be quite a fabulous show because they knew this was the last time they were going to perform it. But I did tell them that, when this is over and this thing, we will obviously restage the show. So our commitment is to make sure that we run the show again once the epidemic is over and once the scare is done. But it was a very surreal time, Tracy. It was like, it was the first time in my life that a show was actually cancelled. One of my shows were cancelled. I had experienced that as an audience member and as someone who was listening when Jerome had to cancel Phantom in the early 2000s. That was kind of the same. But this was, I think, in a way, probably because of the situation and whatever, it was easier for us to explain to everyone why we are cancelling. It's not like, for example, with these shows, I always run a massive risk. And I did explain to the cast, I said, look, there's any number of reasons that can actually cause us to cancel a show. Number one, any one of my lead actors could lose his voice, right? Which means the show has to get cancelled because the whole nature of the Puswedilla plays is that we don't have understudies. It's just one actor playing that role because that's his role, right? So, for example, if something happened to Sula's voice or if Sula broke his leg or something, right? We have to cancel the show. We have no choice. There's no one who can step into the role, no one who knows that role. And most importantly, even if, I suppose Nishanta would know the singing parts and the dialogue, but the problem is that the audience doesn't want to see anybody else other than Sula playing that role. They don't want anyone other than Tarusha playing that role because in their minds, that's
it now.
Right? So we do have, we do run those risks, but thankfully, we've never had to cancel a show on account of something else. But because of the reason of the coronavirus, I think it was easier for the cast to kind of accept it. This is completely beyond our hands, this is beyond our control, whatever. So, let's do the best that we can. So that's how we handled it. Yeah, but it was a very surreal experience on Sunday night, watching these guys performing for there were 7 people in the auditorium. And we had moved the chairs so that we could place the cameras properly and whatever. And it was beautiful. It was a beautiful show. So I was one of those 7 in the audience who watched the show.
Right.
And we ran full tech. We ran everything just like an audience would be there.
Mm-hmm. Gosh. I understand because I was in Karachi about to open a show. And then we also came back on the 15th, which is... when you guys also decided to close down.
Yes, Sunday was the day we
and you're absolutely right. It was so surreal. You're there almost in a kind of denial going, no, it can't be this.
Yes, it can't be.
Right? or it's happening somewhere else. It's not going to happen to us. And it's very, very surreal. So now you were talking about, like, so you offered to refund tickets and things like that. Did people take you up on that? I mean, did a lot of people?
So we obviously announced that we were going to refund the tickets. Unfortunately, we went to lockdown immediately. So we've actually just got approval from the health authorities to actually do the refunds next week. So actually from next Tuesday onwards, we are doing the refunds of the tickets. And that was a very particular. So on Tuesday morning, we are refunding the Monday morning downstairs tickets, Monday downstairs tickets. Tuesday evening, we are refunding the Monday balcony tickets. Wednesday, we are refunding the Tuesday morning tickets and so on, because the MOH is very concerned about any gathering more than 100 people. Right. So that's their thing. So we have now follow social distancing guidelines and this thing and all that. So, but we are actually starting the refund process only next week. So we haven't been able to get approval until then. But now finally we got the approval to do the refund, because that also classifies it again, because technically about 700 people will come for refunds.
But that's going to have such an impact on your production expenses, isn't it? I mean, having to refund all this. And the other thing is, sorry, go ahead.
So when we took the decision to cancel the show, obviously there was a huge, because we canceled 4 shows, right? So, and the thing with things like Puswedilla is the tickets are kind of pricey, right? But then the production is also very expensive, right, to run, right? So, just to give you a scale of this thing, our entire lights and the screens and everything cost us almost 1.5 million, right? So those are set up much ahead, and we had like almost 30 headsets and massive sound equipment. We have a full band, whatever. So when we took the decision, we knew that this was going to be a massive loss for SLM, but then we have no choice. We had to, so we'll have to bite the bullet, however unpleasant it may be.
Yeah, I mean, it does sort of make me wonder, because I've been reading messages from artistic directors and theatre sort of establishments from around the world. And in general, they are appealing to the public, saying, we will refund if you absolutely need it, but also let us keep it and like use it to sustain our artists and our work and keep going forward. And I wonder, I mean, you'll probably face that as well. You must have a lot of loyal patrons who say it's okay, keep it.
Yes, in fact, I had suggestions from many people saying, please don't refund, just let us hold on to the tickets, and when you have the show again, we'll use the tickets. But that of course creates a problem at the box office, right? Because if you, for example, have a ticket, say row D for Saturday, and you expect to get same row for the repeat show, that kind of causes a problem for us, because we don't know how many tickets are out there and whatever. So it kind of made sense for us to sort of make the refund, and hopefully when we do repeat the show, we can probably catch up on the this thing. But though we won't fully be able to this thing, because even a repeat show will have almost all the costs associated with the original show, because there's no diminishing of costs, right? So we'll have to take it as it comes, I suppose.
And just following on from that and taking it as it comes, I just want to sort of just bat some ideas about with you, in terms of how is socially distanced seating going to impact our productions? Because as it is, it's expensive to put on shows, and you have all these payments to make anyway, right? So from a company's point of view, it's going to increase costs. And like say the Lionel went with socially distanced seating, you can get like 200 people in there. So that's going to affect.
Let's assume 50% we've cut out.
Okay. So but that's going to affect income, which is how most theatre companies survive. And isn't that also going to affect how, so not just the Lionel went, but institutions like that, isn't it also going to affect how they survive? Because they also have their own costs. And
yes, they do. And I know for a fact that now the Lionel went, since we vacated the place, they don't have any bookings literally they are not expecting any bookings until we are talking October. So they are without any source of revenue until October. The good thing, I mean, I don't know about the other theaters, but I do know about the Lionel Vent is that they can actually, and I know they've stripped down costs so much so that I don't think they even have certain these things. I mean, certain of their staff have been asked to, take whatever, and they don't have like the contract staff coming in. Cleaning staff is not coming in, obviously, because they don't have any more revenue. The good thing, I suppose, with the Lionel Vent is that they don't have a massive bank loan to pay because all that was settled by Harold Pearis and the Lionel Vent Foundation.
Okay.
Because the theater is actually a private trust, right? It's a public trust, sorry.
Right.
So they don't have to pay any lease on the land, or they don't have to pay any lease on the theater or anything. The premises is actually covered. So that's probably a good thing, because we know that our home is kind of safe. It's not going to get repossessed by a bank. That's a huge relief. But I know they're really struggling. I mean, it's very desolate. I mean, I went to pick up some of our equipment which we had left back because we actually kept a grand piano at the Lionel for 2.5 months. So when I went to actually pick up this thing, I mean, it looked so lonely. I mean, Dilrukshi had to come and open the gate herself, because security is down. There's only one security instead of two, so it was quite sad, really.
Nice. I should mention Dilrukshi is the Lionel Vent's theatre manager. For anyone who's not familiar with that name. So, I mean, let's talk about making theatre in the future and being able to do sort of, say, fairly big productions like what you're talking about, and which a lot of companies tend to do in general. It's going to become even harder, isn't it? I mean, say you do a play and you can get only 300 people in an audience. Is that going to affect future ticket prices?
Well, ideally it will, because there is a fixed cost that we have to pay, whether we like it or not, whether there's 200 or 600. I mean, you can't really this thing. But I actually had a chat with my main lighting provider, and he himself told me, he said, look, if you're going to have less people in the auditorium because of this, and if you want to run your show, and he was talking about the Circle of Strife, which we cancelled, he said, if that's the case, sit down and we'll have a chat, and I will charge you less for my equipment on a daily basis, because you'll have to have more shows to cater to the audience. So I think it will have to be a dialogue between us and the suppliers to say, look, I'm having only 300 people, so per show I can only give you this much, because a lot of equipment is per day, right? And when they rent you a moving head, they don't care if there's 600 people or 1,000 people in the audience, you still pay the charge for the moving head. But the problem is our revenue is different. So he's kind of cognizant of that fact, and he's saying, I am willing to charge you, if you're having 50% of the audience, I'm willing to charge you 50% per day less for my equipment, because you're catering to less people, right? And you book my equipment for double the number of days because you are running for double the number of days, right? That kind of, those things I think are essential. But I am so for me, Tracy, and I know this is the same for you. See, theater for me is something, as opposed to many other forms of entertainment. Theater's power for me remains in one thing. It's in its very direct and live connection to its audience. Okay. Yeah. Theater is not theater if there is no one in the auditorium. Okay. If you are watching my play on a screen, I'm sorry, I can call it theater. I can delude myself into thinking I'm performing for a global audience. I'm not. I'm actually showing them a 3-hour teledrama. Okay. And then the moment I take my work through a screen, I am then competing with every other streaming provider. I'm competing with YouTube. I'm competing with Netflix. I'm competing with Hulu, you name it. None of those guys can give us the power of an actor, of watching a live actor on stage performing. That is an incredible power. You've been on stage, and there's an audience of 600 responding to you. They don't have to laugh everything. I mean, I will base it, for example, on your performance of Sophia in Widows way back in 98. Now people know how old you are, right? Now, you would have felt
slightly younger than
yes, you would have felt the energy that those people give. Okay, and sometimes that is not by way of applause or way of laughter or anything. It's sometimes just how silent they are when they listen to what you're saying. You can feel that energy. And we know that actors feed off that energy. There have been brilliant actors who absolutely suck up until dress rehearsal. But as a director, put them in front of an audience and they'll be fine. And I can give you examples of two. I know you worked with both of them, Krishan Jayaratnam and the late John Benedict, right? Both of them would do only the bare minimum up until dress rehearsal night. The bare minimum not to get blasted by me, right? But they'll just be there. They'll know where their entrances, exits, their lines, everything. And they'll be fine. But put them in front of an audience and they go from just being fine to being incredible, right? That's the power. I mean, obviously, that's how actors feed off. Some feed off more and less. So for me, and unfortunately, sometimes the one thing I hate to see is empty seats. Because I always say actors cannot act to empty seats. You need to have, you need to perform to people. Even if they don't like your work, right? That's fine, right? At least that's fine. Even if they boo, I prefer that over an empty seat. I would prefer an audience that actually boos a performance rather than empty seats to my actors, right? Because if they're booing, that means they're giving me feedback. We didn't like what you said. We didn't like it. If they groan, and I know during Freddy especially, I've had collective groans from the audience, right? I mean, that's some of the things that we've said. I've had collective groans from the audience and say, I can't believe you actually said that. But that's fine because that's a reaction, and that's, I guess, the power of theater, right? I mean, that has been unchanged for centuries. I'm not just talking about conventional theaters, but the power of connecting to people like that has been used by Roman theater companies on the street corners of Rome to make fun of the Caesars. They did that, right? Even during the time of the Caesars, and the Caesars allowed it because they knew that was a way to keep the population happy. Fine, you laugh at me, that's fine, But that direct connection. So I guess.
So are you?
Yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say. So are you one of those people on the street corners that is allowed?
I hope so. I hope so. Also, I think going forward. One of the things that I'm particularly happy about, especially when it comes to our English theatre, is to see so much more original work being put on stage, right? And I think that's great. And I know you did an original play recently, something that you wrote, right? Which unfortunately I couldn't see because I was overseas, but my wife watched it and she loved it, right? And see, when it's an original work, the way I see it is you're part of our society, right? You're part of us. Yeah, I mean, you live here, you live in this society. So when you write an original piece of work, inevitably you bring your experiences, your thoughts, your feelings as a member of our society. So your work becomes relevant to us. Right? It becomes relevant to society. And I think going forward, if we are to survive in this post-COVID world, one of the things that we will have to do, because one of the things that a big cost for English theatre, right, is the payment for copyright. And now you cannot do plays without copyright, okay? Because everyone's very aware of that. You cannot do. But when you write your own play, you don't have to worry about that, right? Now, I know people will say, okay, we can put it into the expense or whatever, but we are talking about actually making plays work, right? In a environment where even our audiences, their disposable income has shrunk, right? So they will also, we can mark up tickets, but that doesn't mean we can sell out the tickets, right? So you have to keep the tickets affordable. You have to keep it affordable to a wide range of society, not just obviously high society who would come to see English theatre, but also every range of society. I mean, we as
everybody.
Kids, we were in a typical middle class household, but we went to see theater because at that time theater was very, very affordable. So in this in this post-COVID world, we need to make it even more affordable. One of the things we can do is just reduce our expenses. And one of the ways we can reduce our expenses is obviously copyright payments range from, sometimes $3,000 for smaller plays, sometimes to $30,000-$40,000 for bigger plays.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And in this context, $40,000 is almost 7.5 million rupees. Right? So I think we need to kind of look at that, because I think the more you do original stuff, the better you become at it, right? I mean, obviously you become better, you learn your mistakes, you do this. I haven't learned because my plays are still hit 3 hours, right? Apparently, so I haven't still learned from my writing for the last 12 years. But I think that's probably maybe one of the things that we need to look at. I don't know how well social distancing will work inside the theater. I don't know how well social distancing will work inside the theater, because you have pockets of people, but it's not undoable. Okay, you've done Shakespeare in the Park, where your audience is not sitting in orderly rows, right? And I know there are, for example, street performers. Their audience don't sit in orderly rows and seats, but they're all scattered all over the place, and that's fine, right? I'm sure in the olden day theaters also people just stood wherever and watched. It's not like only the noblemen had seats. I guess you can do it, but it's all a question of balancing out how much you can make, because obviously no one's going to run plays at losses. Understanding that corporates also have very, very immediate expenses, and patronizing or showing corporate patronage for theater doesn't always come to the top of their list. It doesn't. Yep. It's never at the top of their list, right? So you have to.
It's going to fall even further down that list now, isn't it?
Exactly, it is going to. Yeah. So we'll all have to be very conscious of those things. We'll all have to be very conscious of those things, and figure out. I suppose we will muddle through a little bit and somehow find our feet. Maybe a year or so.
I'm really excited, to see how different people to cope with it, and how we will all adapt in our different ways. Mm-hmm. There's general consensus, again, like from all my sort of reading, there's general consensus that this is a time for a reset in theater, to sort of really look at how we are making work, and to see if there's something that we could change for the better. Mm-hmm. And so this is a question I'm asking all our guests. If you could, and I'm talking about the way theater works pre-COVID, if you could, what would you change about the way theater works in this country? Not just your own practice, but, generally from what you see. It's just, I'm just inviting you to use your imagination.
Yeah. So I'd be a bit careful in categorizing theater in this country as one unit, because I think there are several kind of genres of theater, right? So you have the Sinhalese theater, which is obviously professional, right? And who obviously have many productions and many plays happening over, consistently. So at any given time, there's a Sinhalese play. Then you have English theater, so you have kind of the professional groups who do kind of the smaller plays and whatever this thing, and then you have the larger groups who do the big, the absolutely massive productions, involving, they run for multiple days. The thing with English theater is that English theater is always a finite thing, in the sense you run a play, you show it, and you're kind of done. Then you have to go on to the next play, right? Whereas English theater plays the plays do keep running for long periods of time. They have revivals and they have do this thing. Somehow, I don't know, the English theater audience doesn't really care much for revivals, as such, because I suppose because the audience is also really small. You can't, you couldn't run even a really good play. You couldn't run for 6 months, because, by the time the end of the first month comes, you'll be playing.
We don't have the numbers.
We just don't have the numbers. So for me, there are different kind of theater. So I wouldn't want to comment on, for example, Sinhalese theater, because that's not something I know much about, right? Nor the professional theater, because that also I don't know much about, although I did, We were almost a professional company for a while, and now we've taken a conscious decision not to, and to move back out, and we are now strictly an amateur company, right? Because obviously we work with massive numbers, we work with these things, and the people who work on our productions have different aspirations, different things that they want to get out of theater to the ones who work in profession, and that's fine. Both can coexist. Both do coexist everywhere. There is no, doesn't be a conflict. In terms of the amateur theater companies, I know there is obviously there is no. I feel that we need to kind of connect more to the corporate world and to have a lot more interaction with them so that they understand. Because there is obviously, Tracy, there is a huge marketability for English theatre. And I'm sorry if I sound elitist, but that's the truth, right? There is a massive marketability for English theatre, right? I feel that there is not enough of this thing because obviously for a long, I mean, not only in Sri Lanka, everywhere else, theatre is kind of an outing. It's kind of an event. Okay, you dress up to go to the theatre, right? It's supposed to be that, right? It's supposed to be.
Yeah.
It's not a decision. You let me just nip down to the pub and have a drink. No, it's not supposed to be that. Which is one of the reasons why, despite whatever this thing, I don't sell tickets at the gate. Right? I do not sell tickets at the gate. All my tickets have to be bought beforehand. Right? I stop gate tickets. So I don't want, it shouldn't be that. For me, I know it's a very outdated way of thinking, but for me, theater must be something that you look forward to. It's an event, you come there, there are actors and the crew members who work there, butt off and whatever. So they need to be afforded that respect. Right? So I feel that maybe there must be a better connect between that and to actually exploit the power of the English theatre itself, okay? Because obviously in the English language, we have access to fabulous players, right? Now I feel we have access to really good playwrights too, right? People who are producing their original work, which also has an excellent marketability factor to it, right? And I know that in this instance, if you look at it, the last 5-10 years, how many corporate events have you been to? Many. All the corporate events, the same formula, right? They have a stage, they have lights, they're bringing some drummers, they're bringing some dancers, they might bring in a few singers. It's the same event, right? They just mix up the performance a bit, but the format is the same, right? Now, I have been fortunate enough to be able to sort of speak to, and a few of the corporates, have been progressive enough to think, why should we bust that much of money on a 5-star hotel corporate event? Can we use that money and have a corporate event at the Lionel Went, right? And use it to fund the play, and then give our customers, our high-profile customers or whoever, a different experience. It's not an experience they can have every day, right? I mean, if you want to have a cocktail at a 5-star hotel, you can actually do that any day of the week, right? It's not like there's anything special. But a theater performance, right, at the Lionel Went is not something that happens every day of the week, right? So it's kind of, so I feel that's something we can do better in terms of that.
Okay. Following on from your comments, I mean, it's not enough corporates who do that, right? One of the biggest issues recently was, some big institutions bringing in all these international theater troupes and paying them, but then refusing to pay our actors that they took in that worked the same hours and all that. There isn't that support for local theater from, corporates with a lot of power. And they do kind of take away from our industry and our sort of perceiving local artists as good by doing things like that, by bringing these jobbing actors like us, and then saying, no, you work for free because you're getting exposed.
Yeah. So I've had a huge problem with that. In fact, in one of my Freddy shows, not one, but 2 performers brought that up. We put up their poster. I literally took them to the cleaners. I think it's abhorrent. I think it's abhorrent that that a local corporate has the goal to pay up to 50 million, upwards of 50 million, and then suck up all the sponsorship money available from all the other corporates because they are a giant corporate and they can actually almost insist on sponsorship, right? And then bring in actors. Okay, so that's fine. Let's assume that that's a business decision that they took. But what was even more abhorrent for me, and we actually did that, and in fact, I remember one of my performers actually saying that all the kids who acted in Sound of Music, right, all the local kids were not paid. They were expected to perform for free because they got what is apparently called exposure, right? And I remember one of my performers saying that that it's probably, I mean, he equated it to almost the slave culture, right? He equated to almost that, and the fact that they expected all the local people to work for free. Even I mean, I'm not 100% sure, but I was told. So please, if this is inaccurate, please forgive me. I was told that some very respected personalities were expected to work free for the audition process as well, right? That when they were auditioning, that they expected some of the giants in the local industry to actually turn up for that, again, just because this was supposed to be all about exposure. And I'm going like, what exposure do these people need? These people are very, very big in their own right in this country, and they shouldn't be expected to give up their expertise for free for essentially what is somebody else's money-making enterprise, right? Because even if you call it a brand building exercise, they are building brand for the purposes of making profit at some point. No? So it is a money-making exercise. So you can call it, I mean, they can say we are bringing down because we want to build our brand. But why are they building the brand? They're building the brand because they want to make money. In which case, if they are paying the foreign actors, they should have paid the local actors. Beyond that, I mean, that itself is abhorrent. But beyond that, I find it strange that companies are okay with spending 50, 60 million on bringing foreign actors or foreign productions here, when our local industry, I mean, I'm telling you, forget 50 million, if they put 25 million into the Sinhalese theatre, okay, I'm sure the Sinhalese theatre could have come up with at least 25 different plays. That's what I'm saying. If you have 50 million to bring down foreign artists, surely could you give 25 million to develop the local Sinhalese theatre industry, right? I mean, it stands, I mean, I don't know. I would see it as, if you want to build your brand, there's nothing better to build your brand than that, for goodness sake, right? Sinhalese theatre, I mean, Sinhalese theatre, Tamil theatre, English theatre, you know, this is local theatre we are talking about, right? And that has to, I suppose there has to be awareness. They just don't see it. It's just, you know, we still have this mentality that anything, if it's especially something to do with English theatre or whatever, anything that a white skin can do is probably better than what a local can do. You know, although, I mean,
that is what I was going to say.
Although you have worked with actors, and so have I. I mean, although I can't sing, I mean, I know we have some talent that's quite incredible. That is absolutely quite incredible, right? I mean, I mean, I've seen Les Miserables on Broadway. I've seen Les Miserables done here, and obviously the Broadway production. I mean, I know this thing. It's a fabulous production. They are brilliant. I mean, they are the best in their craft. You don't expect them to be anything short of brilliant. These are professional actors who've been to places like Juilliard, and, you know, who work with the best technicians. They have the best set designers. They have the best vocal directors. You don't expect anything short of brilliance from a Broadway show for which you pay $100 a ticket. Absolutely no qualms about that. But when you walk into the Lionel Wendt and you pay, well, 1/10 of that cost, and you see someone like Jehan Aloysius or Kanishka or Rehan Almeida performing, right? Maybe they are not as brilliant as that, but they're damn good, right? I mean, there's absolutely no shortage of, you know, as an audience member, you don't feel I have never felt cheated out by watching a local production. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm talking about the local productions of which I have seen the professional equivalent on Broadway and West End, right? I have not felt cheated out, right? I know the constrictions that there at the Wendt. I know the issues that you can't even put a bit of glue on the vent stage. Everything has to be placed on the stage. You have to weight it down. You can't put nails. You can't do this with all those restrictions. I have never felt cheated out, right? So why would corporates think that it's okay to bring down, it's okay to this thing and then close their doors to everybody? Tracy, it's not just that, but I have seen establishments in Colombo who refuse to keep a poster of a play saying we don't allow that sort of thing. They had posters of all these foreign shows because that's okay. There are establishments now. I mean, I know you and I don't go placing posters, but I'm sure there are people in your company whose job it is to go and keep a poster just to inform a few people that a play is happening, right? There are some establishments which say we don't keep posters, right? They won't even extend that. I mean, what does it cost just a poster outside your door, for goodness sake? We are not, and it's not a poster with obscenity or anything like that. It's just a poster informing whoever walks in that there's a play happening and tickets are available or whatever. There are establishments that you won't even allow that. But they had no problem with keeping, posters of the foreign productions.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I think that we should all think about, especially now, there's this huge debate about colorism going on, and really how ingrained these things are in us to almost an unconscious level, really, where we do accept, okay, these people are better than us, but we have world-class performers. It's just we don't have the territory in which to support them. And so we constantly have these brilliant people then leaving to pursue a career overseas because they can't have that kind of fulfilling thing. Yeah, I mean, and that's a big can of worms that, if we got into, we'd be here until tomorrow talking. So I'm going to stop us right there because it's been nearly an hour, Feroze, and I want to thank you so much for taking the time to share your thoughts with us. It's been really, really insightful.
Thank you.
So I'm going to ask if you would share your reading with us now.
Yes. So currently, I am reading this really funny book by this guy called Scott Adams. For those of you who are not aware, he's the guy who created the famous Dilbert cartoon, right? So Scott Adams used to work in a corporate environment, and he wrote this book, which is "Stick to Drawing Comics, Monkey Brain," right? So, yeah. So the passage I'm reading, it's called "Helpful Critical Guy Syndrome." Over the last 15 years, I have received approximately 1 email per week saying, in effect, "You used to be funny, but something has gone horribly wrong." This email, written by a different person each time, is long and passionate and often detailed in its argument. These helpful critics make it clear that their tough love is intended to snap me out of whatever steaming hole of mediocrity I have shoved my head into so that I can get back to my past ways of excellence. All of these emails are from males who seem, based on their well-written letters, above average in intelligence. That's 780 nearly identical messages from men and 0 of this type from women. I call it the Helpful Critical Guy Syndrome, or HCGS for short. I recognize this syndrome because I have it myself. I can't tell you how many times I have thought, quite seriously, that if I could just sit down with this or that famous person for about 20 minutes, I could straighten everything out. Rarely does it occur to me that my thorough lack of knowledge about the subject matter is a handicap. I fantasize that what matters most is the incredibly succinct and Mark Twainish way that I would explain my suggestion. For example, if you want to end world hunger, you have to give people food. I realize it doesn't sound all that persuasive here, but I imagine that when I say it in the Oval Office, I come up with a better phrasing that makes all the difference. When fantasizing about being smart and helpful, I find that it's best to leave out the details.
Thank you. That's a lovely perspective.
Yes. I kind of like the way he has a very self-deprecating sort of humor, and so I really like his work.
Cool. Okay, we have a couple of questions. There's one here from Lihan Mendes.
Okay.
For actors in the local theatre in Sri Lanka, in your opinion, which is a better teacher, experience or professional training?
Okay, good question, Lihan. I wouldn't, professional training is obviously very crucial. I wouldn't say it is the most crucial thing. Experience kind of, to me, would trump professional training. Yeah. But of course, there is the basic things that you have to do. I mean, no matter who you are as an actor, breath control is important, right? If you're going to use your voice, you need to have breath control. So there are lots of basic building blocks that actors must have in place, which is why it's really important, I feel, that kids be sent through that, because it's so much easier to teach kids than teach adults, right? Having said that, experience, theater in itself is such a varied, such a dynamic space. It is not for anyone. I don't think anyone can pick and say this guy's going to be a successful actor, this guy's not going to be a successful actor, and so on and so forth. I myself have had actors who have played their first big role with me and who have been absolutely brilliant, right? Without a doubt, right? I've been, one of my first really mind-opening experiences in theater was I walked into the Lumbini once when I was quite small, I think, and watched a performance of Sergeant Nalathambi performed by Nihal Silva. And I was just blown away by the incredible connection he had to his audience, and I was blown away by how all these people were reacting. And it wasn't like, I had never seen theater like that. This was like an audience, obviously not an audience I had ever seen at the Wendt, but these guys were just absolutely connecting with the play. And I don't know whether Nihal had any professional, but he certainly knew, obviously through his experience, and was a very skilled actor, at how to connect to the audience, right? The thing with acting, Tracy, is that whether we like it or not, we are all actors, okay? That's the thing. Some of us take that acting onto a stage, but in our lives, we all act. We all have different personalities, different parts of our personality that we show. For example, the part of Tracy Holsinger that your kids see is not necessarily the part of Tracy Holsinger that your actors see. Not necessarily the part of Tracy Holsinger that your husband sees, right? There are different things. It's not like you're three different people. It's the same person, but you just, maybe you turn off a few things for your kids, you turn off a few things for your actors. We all have different
or this interview.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So we all have different things. So whether we like it or not, we all play roles. We all play a role. When I'm in office with my employees, I play the role of a boss. So there are certain things that I wouldn't do. When I'm in actors, there are certain things I would do, right? So I feel that we all, and that acting we do subconsciously. We don't realize that. For example, when you're with your school friends, right? People behave very differently than when they are with their work colleagues, right? It's a very different dynamic, right? It's almost like a different person who's there. So I feel, so what you're doing is you're playing a role. No one is being false there. It's just, that's a part of you that those people know and those people see. And there's a part of you that other people know and see. So we all act, whether we like it or not. We're doing it from the day we are born, right? So we kind of, when we get onto stage, right, it's all about being able to, I think, harness that skill and then imbibe a different character, right? Imbibe a completely different character and make the audience believe this is who I am, right? If, for example, there was a character of Tracy Holsinger in a play, right? No one would be able to play that better than you, only because you know every backstory that Tracy Holsinger has had in her life, every bitter experience, every happy moment, every crushing disappointment, every bit of joy, you've lived through it, right? So when we direct actors, we also try to give them as much of the character's backstory as possible so that they enrich that role. So I guess my answer to that, experience, I guess. experience would, I mean, professional training is important, but I would think it's better to have one with experience.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, you gain experience as you go along, and there's,
Yeah.
I believe in professional training, but I also think there are sort of black holes that you can go down that aren't, you know, an actor doesn't need to know what the character had for breakfast, or that it stubbed its toe when it was 5 or something. You know, I think there are things like that you can avoid. Thank you very much for that, Feroze. And Dihan also says thank you. There's a comment from Himadrini Abenayaka here. She says, Feroze, you're absolutely right about the local production of Les Miserables in Sri Lanka. I was fortunate to be a part of both shows in 96 and 97. As I know, this was the first time a revolving stage was used. It was the first time that a revolutionary attempt to give actors and audience a Broadway experience. Kudos to Jerome De Silva and the very talented workshop players. Thank you for that, Himadrini. Okay, and there's another question from Deshan Tenakon, and it's going back to something we were talking about earlier. Re-copyright costs being so high, might we see a flowering of original local writing for theatre as a result of the virus?
I sincerely hope so. I really do hope so, because I think that, I mean, Tracy, you've done plays by other writers and so on and so forth, and now you've actually ventured into local, into your own original work. I'm sure you found that there was a much, actually, there's a far bigger emotional reward at the end of it too, isn't there? Right?
Yeah, there is.
When you see that play on stage and you realize, my goodness, all of that came from me. I'm the one who wrote that script. I'm the one who,
and the ownership, you know.
Yeah, it's the ownership, right? So I sincerely hope that there will be this thing. And one of the things that I hope to see soon, and we live in an age where everyone takes immediate issue. I mean, you do something, there are lots of people to take issue at it, right? When World War I and World War II happened, those were two incidents that had massive human cost in terms of human life, both great tragedies. But we were able to laugh at those. We still laugh at those. Okay, if you remember, the famous comedy Allo Allo was all about World War II, and there have been plenty of works done about it, serious, not so serious, actually laughing. And I hope that we are not living in such a this thing that we are scared to take the Mickey on coronavirus. Okay, because at some point we're gonna have to. Okay, we're going to have to stop saying, oh, people, because I know the moment someone tries to make fun of the coronavirus, like, how can you make fun of something like this? So many people died, so many this thing, lockdown, so many lives. Yes, we know that same thing happened in World War I, so probably happened in the Spanish flu, probably happened in many of the other plagues and things that happen that have happened in the course of human history. Although we have had many apocalyptic events in human history, we've always managed to actually have a laugh about it. Right? There have been so many, so many hundreds and thousands of skits and sketches and done making fun of World War I, making fun of World War II, not only making fun of the losers, making fun of the victors as well. I hope that we are not living in too much of a this thing that we are scared to make fun of the coronavirus. Right? Because eventually we're going to have to start making fun of it. We're going to have to start writing stories of courage during the coronavirus, writing stories of hope that happened during the coronavirus. We're going to also have to start writing comedies about this, maybe musicals about this, maybe plays, and there's a whole spectrum. If you take World War II, there's a whole spectrum of work that has come out of that. Artwork that has come, there's plays, there's musicals, there's serious plays, there's movies, and then there's been things that just took the Mickey on World War I, took the Mickey on Adolf Hitler, took the Mickey on Churchill.
I mean, in terms of the coronavirus,
I
can see a potential for humor.
I sincerely hope that we are not living in too much of a correct world where people say, oh, how can you make fun of this? So many people died, this thing, you're belittling this, and stuff like that. And I sincerely hope that we all have the courage to actually, write work that we are.
Is this leading up to the fact that your next play is going to be about the coronavirus?
No.
You're going to take the Mickey.
Yeah.
Okay, so sorry, I've got a comment here, I think. It's a question. Why are people not drawn to sophisticated presentations of art? It doesn't need to be in a language that isn't accessible, but even when it's nonverbal or in the simplest of the form of language, people aren't drawn to the very basic intention of theatre, which I believe is a discourse through entertainment. Can we fix that?
Oh, that's a really, really, really good question.
Can I make a comment before you start, Ridhmaka? I think people are drawn to sophisticated presentations of art. I think there are, but it also depends on what you mean by sophisticated. There's different ways of expressing that word. Are you talking about technical sophistication? Are you talking about sophistication in terms of the content, the issues addressed within there, and those are delivered? That's, I mean, it would be great if you could clarify that. I do think there are people who are engaged. I'm just sort of questioning the use of your word sophisticated. Theatre, the intention of theatre is a discourse. On what is what I'm asking? I think the intention of theatre, first and foremost, is to tell a story. And through those stories, different issues emerge and we talk about them. But the first purpose of theatre is to tell a story, is to share our histories and to connect in terms of emotional experiences. So content-wise, sorry, he's saying, this is what Rebecca is saying, content-wise, why aren't people drawn to sophisticated presentations of art? And he says, content-wise, and I'm referring to the masses. Okay. I mean, I'm sorry, but as far as I'm concerned, you're really digging a hole. What are you saying here? Digging yourself into a hole here. Are you saying that the masses cannot appreciate intellectual content? What, you know?
I believe maybe he's referring to the fact, and this may be actually true, is that we have got more and we live in a more immediate time now, right? Everyone wants everything done immediately. We want it. We don't want to wait until Tuesday 7:30 to watch our favorite teledrama. We want to now get onto Netflix and binge watch the whole thing at once. There is this massive technological revolution that we've had, right, has kind of put everything. We expect everything to be delivered to our phone, right? There's a sense of immediacy. There's a sense of I want it now, instant, and there is a sort of an attention span drop, as it were, and that is actually true over the years. The more you spend time on screens and these things, your attention span kind of drops, right? We get used to wanting more stuff at our fingertips, more stuff of this thing, and we don't really dwell on, on anything for too long. And that kind of maybe what he's referring to. Like, for example, I'm sure.
But you're 3 hours long, no?
I agree, but that's in the context of the theater. In the context of the theater, yes, they do this thing. When we did Widows in '98, it was 3 hours long, Tracy. Widows was a long play, right? And Widows was a depressing play. Okay, it's a depressing play where you're not sure whether everybody's potentially all the women are shot. And their men never come back, and it's a depressing play. It's this thing, but in '98, I mean, you saw the reactions that we had from audience members, and I still remember one reaction that really humbled me, because we had finished the performance. We were all backstage, and obviously, we were very happy. The performance went off really well. Everyone's congratulating each other and whatever. There were these two women, slightly old women, standing backstage, and I actually went up there and I asked them, "Are you here to see someone?" Because generally that's what it is. And that lady just took my hand and said, "Thank you so much for doing this play." And I was then I realized she didn't have any, she was not connected to anyone in the cast. She was just someone from the audience. And then she told me, my son disappeared, during the JVP conflict, right? So for them, that play had such an immediacy, had hit home, this thing, those women, the women they saw on stage was them sitting back, sitting at their homes, waiting for their loved ones to return. So, but that was 1998. I don't know whether we have that same sort of attention span anymore. We've gotten since 1998 to now, Tracy, everybody's got a smartphone in their hands. Everybody's got these things. We've got the WhatsApps, the social medias, the streaming services, the news services, everything flooding us. This thing sort of, everything's competing for our attention span. I think that may be what he's talking about.
I don't think so. Ridhmaka, I understand what you're saying. And I feel like it's coming from some sort of experience that you have had. But if you are in this business, and here's self-reflection and just thinking about stuff is very important when you're making work. Right. And I really want to sort of ask you to not be so generalized in your comments. People aren't drawn to sophisticated presentations of art. And you're talking in terms of content, and you're saying the masses, and you're saying they don't like it. I feel you have to revisit those comments because they are very generalized. And asking a question like that, we can't. I mean, for me, some of our most powerful theatre comes from the masses, from companies that I have seen, working companies that I have seen, traveling, who are not privileged artists in any way, who make some of the most powerful work. And maybe you haven't seen that. But I do caution you against using such general terms. I understand what you're trying to say, and I agree with you in some aspect, but I do think you need to think about how you form these thoughts, because, say, the masses in general, I feel that's not, fair on whoever these masses are.
So I spoke about Sergeant Nalathambi as being, something that really changed this thing. Now, Sergeant Nalathambi, to most people, may not have classified as what we call sophisticated theatre, right? It was a story of a bumbling police sergeant. It was derived from another play. It was very funny. The jokes were sometimes corny. The jokes were sometimes crude. A lot of double meanings, a lot of crotch grabbing kind of this thing. But to the people who saw it, and remember, Sergeant Nalathambi ran for over 1,000 shows. 1,000 shows, right? But for the people who saw it, these were people who actually, not at the level in this thing, but they actually suffered some kind of this thing from the police, right? So the fact that this guy was making fun of the police, right, was a big deal, right? And it was almost an expression of their protest that, being unfairly treated by the cops or whatever, when they are on the road doing their jobs and whatever. So it had a massive connect, right? And to me, Sergeant Nalathambi then becomes one of the best forms of theatre. It's connecting in an incredible way to its audience, right? It's resonating with the audience. It's entertaining them. It's making them almost feel empowered, right? It's almost making them feel empowered that someone has the courage to take the mickey on the police, as it were, right?
And comedy and satire began with the masses.
Yeah,
the kind of political satire that we do today, the comedy, those structures, the buffoonery, all that comes, and even Shakespeare's plays.
Even Shakespeare's, I was going to mention that.
Not written for the literati.
Yeah,
they were written for the masses.
one of the reasons why Shakespeare became so popular even with royalty was because they wanted to patronize the people's playwright, right? So bums on the seats, as it were. And his plays obviously appealed to the masses. And because there were so many big numbers at his plays, the Queen also wanted to kind of be seen to be, patronizing the playwright of the masses. And that's basically what he was, right? I mean, that's probably the reason why he has so many dirty jokes and double entendres in his play, because those always, obviously, those people would have been hooting with laughter whenever one of those things happened.
Okay. Shobhada Dias Amaratunga says, in total agreement with your analysis of Sergeant Nalathambi. Thank you very much, Shobhada.
Yeah. I'm sure most people are aware of Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister, the two incredible, I mean, they've been massive influencers on me. I recently watched an interview with Tony J and Jonathan Lane, who are the creators. So apparently, whenever they wrote a script, every single performance that was shown on screen was actually recorded on a Sunday evening in front of a live audience. And the actors talk about it. Obviously, the two leads are no more. So Derek Fowles, who played Bernard, he talks about it. And he says it was so stressful because we had to learn lines, because there was an audience of 250 people coming every week. And our recording was in front of that audience. So literally, they were performing it as a play. And they recorded. Obviously, it was in a studio environment. So the sound, everything was, and the sets were all beautiful. So when when Jonathan Lane was asked why they insisted that every show have live audience, it was not just for the audience's laughter. He had an incredible reason. He said, we were doing a play that took the mickey, not just on the political establishment, but on Whitehall and on the BBC also, right? Because there were lots of episodes where they criticized the BBC. So they apparently wanted actual people to see it so that they form a connection with the play, so that in case they got stopped by the BBC, that there would be a backlash. So all their episodes, they actually wanted real people to come in. And he said when they got they got people to come in, that's members of the public to come in to watch, it kind of helped them with their script writing process, because they figured out what actually resonates with those people, how to take a Whitehall issue and spin it, in a way that people understood it and understood that they were making fun of it.
Okay, thanks. Now we're going to go to Akri Amir's question. What is your secret for attracting sponsorship for your productions? Certainly, you are ahead of the rest of the theatre companies. Is this the nature or type of, is it the nature or type of your plays? Or is it that you've been established through your Puswedilla series?
Well, I guess it's a combination of both. I'm very grateful to have the Puswedilla series, as part of something I have done, because it has a massive recognizability factor. So even if they haven't heard of me, I'm fairly safe. Lots of decision makers in Colombo have heard of Puswedilla, or they've been to a play, or they've watched at least a clip on YouTube. So I'm grateful for that. I guess it's also about I start off every sponsorship discussion with a sponsor saying, I'm not asking you for a favor. I'm proposing a business transaction. I am asking for something of value from you, and I'm willing to give you something of value to you. If those don't match, we'll walk away and we'll still be friends, no issues. So I don't ask for a sponsorship on the basis that I'm asking them for a favor. I'm just asking them to be a little bit open-minded to understand how their brand, their product, or their organization can benefit from associating with a play of mine. And I think that is important, because obviously even post-COVID, people will be very conscious about where they spend their money. We spoke about sponsorship, right? So no need to go to talk to them saying, oh, please help me, I'm doing a play, can you please give me? No, that's not required. We have something of value too. Okay, remember, we have something of value too. It's not like now for example, when I would pitch the Circle of Strife, I would say, you can't see this play anywhere else in the world. It's showing only at the Lionel Wendt. It's showing only in March. Okay, I'm showing it only for 8 days. That's it, right? If you don't get a ticket to watch it on those 8 days, you can't watch it, right? So would you like to give your high profile customers the opportunity to get a ticket for one of my plays, right? So it's kind of, we need to understand we have something of value too, right? And don't discount the fact that we do have a live performance. Okay, I mean, you can listen to a song many times. It's not the same as watching someone singing it. You can listen to a band, but seeing them perform live is a different story. We have that incredible trump card up our sleeves. We have the live acting trump card, right? That's not something Netflix can offer. That's not something any of the streaming services or the TV stations or anyone can offer. They don't have that, right? Yes, they can show you a movie, right? But they can't give you a direct connection to the actor, right? We can, right? We have that. You sit, in the same room as the actor, you hear the actor breathing, you see the actor. If the actor is crying, you see that. Those are real. Those are not edited things. So we have something of value. They have something of value. I guess it's having a conversation to match those two. They need to start seeing the value in this, right? So maybe it's also kind of important for people, and I think that kind of happens maybe at a slightly early stage, where people really, you need to go and see your first play, right? There's so many people in this city, Tracy, who haven't seen a play, right? They have not gone and seen a play. I mean, I can guarantee you that it's not possible. There are so many people in this country who have not seen a play, right? They've never seen it, right? So I think that's where we need to kind of maybe encourage people to do more. Now, I'm the worst person to say this, because a lot of my plays are adults only, because of the language and the content, right? But maybe have these things. I mean, I watched recently, what was that? Peter Pan, was it? Yeah, St. Joseph's did Peter Pan, right? They did Peter Pan a couple of years ago. Geetika was vocal director, Kevin Cruz directed it, and I watched it, and I saw all these kids in the auditorium, and they were having just the most absolutely wonderful time, right? And I actually turned to my wife. I told Ida, I said, I miss this, right? Because I mean, unfortunately, Tracy, I mean, almost all my plays either have just not been suitable for children, or it's basically an adults only play that you can't watch it. But I guess one of the things that we can do is do more plays for children, right? Encourage more children to come, because I guarantee you bring a child to my daughter, obviously she gets to see all these adults only plays from backstage, right? She's already informed me that she would like to, play all the roles in Circle of Strife, right? Which is completely impossible, but you fall in love with stage. You see the magic of the stage, the allure, this thing. There is some incredible connection that the stage has with a child. So maybe one of the things that we can do as English theatre is to expand our audience base, to make it more thing, and maybe do plays that parents can bring their children to, right? So that they can then, after the play, they can ask, what did you like about the play? What didn't you like? What did you think the play was about? It doesn't have to be a Peter Pan. It doesn't have to be an Aladdin. It can be, I mean, a story of Sri Lankan history. Okay, it can be the story of a Sri Lankan queen, told so that children can see it, so that they can have a discussion saying, what was this queen about? I would like to read about this. I would like to, find out more about this, and obviously make them fall in love with theatre.
Yes. Yeah. I was just kind of scanning all the English theatre practitioners at the moment, and suddenly thinking, actually, it's very few of us who, I can actually at this moment, and I'm sorry if I'm mistaken, but actually at this moment, I can only think of Sulochana Dissanayaka, who is absolutely just dedicated her profession to working.
Anushka Sennaikos has done a few plays which you can bring the family to, right?
Yes,
which is
absolutely.
Lady College did Pilots and whatever. But I think a lot more of that. I think we need more of that. Maybe even do
I agree.
Maybe do there's no issue there. I mean, there's no problem with doing a play about, say, something that happened in our history and making it into a children's story, right? It doesn't have to be, we sometimes, I'm guilty of that. I kind of cater to a very, very adult audience only, right? And I've had, maybe fortunate to have so many people saying this is the first time I've come to see a play, and they're like 40 years old, but they've come to see Puswedilla because they've heard about the hype and these things and the politics. Obviously, politics is a big connector to our audiences. Everybody's, kind of political savvy, so political comedies are fun.
Let me steer you to the last question. Will we see Circle of Strife again? Yes, we will, inshallah. As soon as this is over, so we are hopefully targeting October, November, hopefully, as soon as things are returning back to normal. It will take time, but as soon as we are able to, we've given ourselves, we've already planned, how long we need these things. We've kind of kept the actors, told them, this might be happening. So as soon as they obviously, technically theaters are still closed, and the liner when it is closed down, they're doing some urgent repairs until August, mid-August. So as soon as that happens, we will, so our next theatrical outing will be Circle of Strife before we do anything else. Okay. And we're nearly at the 1.5 hour mark. So I'm going to close the questions there. Thank you so much for asking them. And one final little thing from Feroze, which is we've asked him to talk about books by his bed during the time of COVID. Did you forget that? I didn't bring the book, but I can tell you, I'm reading currently a riveting story about Peppa Pig and her visit to the library. Right? It is a riveting tale. I started, so my daughter insists that either me or Ida actually read something to her before she sleeps. So I started reading Cinderella, and I realized, oh my gosh, that story is real. And I kept looking at it and like, I can't believe, no, I'm not going to read this anymore. And I put it down because I'm thinking, like, princess stories that we should just, because I'm trying to figure out what was Cinderella's shoe size, Tracy, that no other woman in that country had that same size of feet. I mean, what is it? Is she European 31, 32, 36? What was she a dwarf, and should she have been in the other story? No, right? And this whole thing of, like, everybody, all these women lining up, and the prince making his decision to marry based on, if this shoe fits, I'll marry you. Not if this shoe fits and you're the girl I met at the party. No. The condition is, find the woman whom this shoe fits, I will marry that one. I'm going like, what if that shoe fit like an 80-year-old woman? But was he going to marry her? No, he wasn't, right? I mean, so anyway, so I'm reading a lot of Peppa Pig at the moment, right? And so that's unfortunately what's on my bedside. There is another book about cybersecurity, but I haven't touched it. It's just there just to make me a little bit intellectual, but I haven't opened that book. I mean, I missed the Peppa Pig phase. That wasn't for my kids. It was Dora. But yes, I know a lot of people love Peppa Pig. And on that note, Feroze Kamardeen, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Tracy. It's been my pleasure. And thanks to Mind Adventures for organizing this and inviting me.